Welcome to the Ask the Experts show with local celebrity host Steve-O. Sit back each week while Steve-O educates you with live in-studio experts, such as lawyers, doctors, home improvement, and financial experts in their field. Call in and have your questions answered each week at 888-565-1470. Now, here is Steve-O with today's expert in their field.
Hey, good afternoon. I'm sure glad we got a great board up because I can't hear. So I'm going to have to start bringing my headphones in. I stopped doing it. Today, and you know you don't hear me say this very often, but I love doing a family law show. We've been doing this show for probably close to 3 years. We really lucked out on this. We have a board-certified family lawyer. Hey, you know what? If you'd like to call us today, I'm going to give out the number. It's 888-565-1470, 888-565-1470. You've got to know Tina Lord now because she's been with us forever. We are on 95.3 FM and 1470 AM, and you can go to Tina's website and actually watch the show live. Give everybody first of all, hello.
Hi.
Give everybody your website.
The website is www.lewertlaw.com. Lewert is spelled Lewert.
We started doing something a little different, and I got a phone call last week, and they said, on your show, why don't you keep saying your name throughout the show? I thought we did.
You just have to listen longer.
Yeah, and, some of us have some, probably questions that are probably easy for you, and I think you skip over them. So I went back to Twitter. What we've been doing now is we promote our show on Twitter. It's Ask the Experts SFL on Twitter, and we ask you, give us questions, because a lot of you are in your cars right now, and you don't want to have a wreck. So what we do now is we have questions for Tina. You've never gotten anything wrong that I know of. This isn't a test, but listen, this is, and I keep telling Tina, you have to have a special, personality to be as a family lawyer, because I used to talk to family lawyers, and they would say, I'm getting out of the business.
Yeah.
I'm going to bankruptcy because
estate planning,
I
wills
just
and trusts,
can't handle it.
I agree. And whether it's a special personality, I've said that to people because I've had younger lawyers come to me or people out of law school like, hey, I'm interested in this area of law. And, do you offer internships, or just people like that have come to me, or other colleagues like, hey, I'm looking to get into family law. And I will tell them it's not for everyone. It's really not for everyone.
How do you explain that?
It's hard to explain. It's hard to elaborate. But you've got to have a thick skin. And there's a lot of emotion. There's a lot of sad things.
Of course, especially kids are involved.
Kids are involved. We deal with, not just obviously the demise of these people's relationship, but also, and all the heartbreak and the sadness and all that. But we see abuse. We see domestic violence. We see a lot of substance abuse, drug and alcohol issues, addictions that people that don't want help with those things, and then it's affecting obviously the custody case and the outcome of that, and what has to be done in the case. And so it's yes, it does. It's not for everyone, and you have to understand that as a family lawyer, those are the things you're going to deal with, and you're going to be helping people with, and also helping, sometimes you're referring them to third parties, therapists, and like I said, substance abuse counselors, and social investigators and guardian ad litem and things like that, where we're looking for help from other experts to help people with some really severe things or severe problems that are going on. So it's a lot, and
now you practice.
Not for
of course,
all.
Your office is in Boca. It's so easy to get to. It's right off of 95 or right off of Federal.
Yeah, good location.
Yeah, it's a great location. But you practice in both Broward, Palm Beach, as well as Dade, and you've even
kind of all over.
You really have, because I guess people find out because you're board certified, and tell everybody what that actually means.
Sure. Board certified means that, and we talked about this last time. I think a lot of people think that when you say you're board certified, it just means you've passed the bar.
Right.
No, not at all. There are very few lawyers in Florida who are board certified. It's Florida's expert designation. So what it means is that You have to practice. I think you have to practice a minimum of 5 years, but you have to have a high number of trials under your belt, complex family law trials. You have to have a high number of just complex family law cases. You have to take a very difficult, hard to pass exam. So it's almost like taking another bar exam, but more specialized only to family law. And most people don't pass it the first time that they take it, or maybe ever. And it's Florida's designation of an expert or a specialist in their field. So you can be board certified in other areas of law, criminal, civil trial practice, real estate, things like that. But for family law, there are only 274 of us in the whole state
right,
that are board certified out of about 100,000 lawyers. So there are very few people who, and it's really just a way for the public to be able to figure out how to find a good lawyer, someone who knows the area, that specialized area of practice.
Well, I got to brag on you. It's better I
That
do
wasn't
it than
enough?
you. I'm going to tell you what I've learned. We've been doing Ask the Experts for about 8 years now. All you do is family law. Mm-hmm. Now, there's a lot of attorneys out there who hang their shingle, but it says family law, criminal law, bankruptcy law, estate planning. And I'm going to tell you, this has become so specialized.
Yeah.
This is all you do.
Correct. Yeah, and I think years ago, and you know, maybe when I was a kid or before I was born, even the trend was general practice, and you kind of had to diversify your knowledge and do a little bit of everything, and just sort of take all cases. And that's not the way. And I find that I see more and more attorneys, doing one area of practice, maybe 2 or 3 at the most, but really, I think the way to benefit the client the most is to have an attorney that does just that one area, especially in family law. It's so complicated. There's so much to it. So I think that's really, is really sort of, we've gotten away from a lot of the and you'll have general practice law firms, but even within those firms, you'll have a specialty family law department and a real estate department and but yeah,
I
just do the one area.
By listening to
really?
You
Well, that's good news.
It's almost like you have a list of 200 things that you have to make sure you hit every one of those. Exactly.
It's all up here, yeah.
Whereas maybe someone who's doing a lot of different other areas,
Mm-hmm.
I'm not putting them down, but I'm just saying the quality of representation when this is all you do is family law. It's funny, the people I know who've been divorced, the ones that did really well, their attorney only did family law.
Yeah.
And there's not a lot of those. This is all you do.
Yeah, and it's funny too because people, I think a lot of just people in general, whether it's the public or even attorneys that don't practice family law, don't necessarily always understand what it means to do family law and what's involved in those cases. And I've had friends that are non-lawyers that'll say to me, "Oh, is it mostly just forms, what you do?" And I'm like, no. What are you talking about? We're doing complex, 5-day trials. And yeah, within one case, like you said, you might have 20 or 30 issues within one case, or you have one issue of for example what you're going to do with the house, but within that you have 5 or 6 other issues of valuing the house and what's a non-marital portion and a marital portion and how to divide the equity and all. So there's so many things that we're dealing with in any one case, and it's very intricate, very intricate.
What does this would drive me crazy. I've asked men before, do you have an attorney? They're getting divorced. Oh, I'm just using my ex-wife's. We're just using the one attorney.
You
to
can't really
save
do that.
money. And what I brought up about this whole list, if you try to do this yourself, you are going to miss so many things because like I said, when I listen to you, it's like this long list that you have up in your head that you've got to hit. And just the common person just not even going to hit maybe even 20% of it.
Yeah. It's unwise, I will say, to not at least consult with a divorce attorney, at least consult with an attorney. And, Florida there's a very high percentage, and it varies throughout the counties, but there is a very high percentage of cases that divorce cases that are finalized where the parties are what they did call pro se for many years, and we've gotten away just in the last year from trying to use those Latin phrases. Self-represented, somebody who does not have an attorney who's self-represented. I think of those cases, maybe they're more appropriate for people who have a very short-term marriage, no kids, no assets, really nothing. They're just getting the divorce, and that's the only issue in the case. But there is a high percentage of those cases locally. But if you have if you have children, if you have any assets that you're dividing, any issue at all in your case, especially alimony,
We've got a bunch of
you need to
prenup
talk to a
questions
lawyer.
here.
You need to talk to a lawyer. I mean, it's you just and I get so many cases later on after the fact that come back
Pay me
and
now or pay
something's
me later.
missing, something was wrong, something was incorrect, something wasn't accounted for, and now we need to fix it. And it's so much harder to fix it, or sometimes it's not even possible to fix it because you didn't do it right in the first place. So
I got 5 different people who wrote in about prenup. It was all based on the same question, but one of them went even further. All of them said, how do you know if you need a prenup? And 2, how do you explain it to your future wife?
The easy question, the first one's the easy
female
question.
to male. It was male to female.
The first question is very easy. If you're getting married, you should get a prenup. Period. Yes. That is my opinion.
Wow.
Yes, absolutely.
What if you don't have a lot of assets?
It doesn't matter.
You could
Maybe
come
you'll
into-
get some.
Oh.
Maybe you'll get some. And, especially for younger people. And I've been pleasantly surprised. I've seen people, younger and younger couples coming to me that are starting out that don't have much, or they're just sort of getting started in life, starting careers and different things, and they don't have much, in the way of assets accumulated yet, but they just want to be smart. And they just want to, life
Well,
is...
how do
life
you
is,
put that, let's say the male, doesn't matter, has money, and the female doesn't. And it could be either way. How do you ask for a prenup?
That's a harder question. And I have usually when someone calls me or comes in for a consultation over a prenup, that's the biggest question. How do you suggest I raise the issue? And that's more just that's a personal, emotional kind of advice, but it's a hard one. I mean, not everyone has the same philosophy. Not everyone has the same, values when it comes to what does marriage mean. Marriage is forever. And if you just look at statistics, it's you just don't know. There are no guarantees
What
in
are
life.
the percentages of divorce now? It used to be
I'm not even
50%.
sure. Yeah, they used to say 50%, then it was higher, then it was lower. I think it varies obviously locally, but it's a high percentage. And think about it. It's a high percentage of divorce. The people getting divorced, obviously are unhappy. Something happened in the marriage, or it just broke down, or they fell out of love, or whatever the reason. And think of all the couples that are married that stay together and choose not to get divorced, but they're still unhappy.
Right.
Think about the people in the world and in your
That's
life.
true. Never looked at it like
it's
that.
a high number. So, it's just the prenup is one of those things that
What is a prenup?
It's okay. So the prenup is a contract, and it's a way to say, if we get divorced, we're getting married, but if we get divorced ever, this is how we're going to divide things. This contract is going to govern our assets. Usually, most of the prenups I see contain provisions that'll say that the parties are keeping their assets separate. So whatever you're coming in with and whatever you acquire in your name is going to be yours, whether it's income, assets, debts, whatever it is, retirement accounts. And that's not exactly the case without the prenup. So the prenup is sort of just saying, let's just simplify this now. If something ever happens between us, this is going to govern. We won't, no need for litigation, no need for fighting, no need to spend a lot of money on lawyers.
Right.
It's all kind of laid out for us. So getting the divorce is hopefully at that point a formality. If it happens 2 years, 5 years, 20 years, 30 years down the road, you have that prenup. So that's what it's for. And it's just a tool. It's just something that it's not romantic.
No.
And it is
Causes
awkward.
problems
It is
sometimes?
a little, sometimes, yeah. If you have
You
someone
don't trust me?
if you have someone who's going to say, I don't want to sign that, what do you think? You're just setting us up for failure. That's a rough one. Maybe you should do some premarital counseling and talk about it and kind of iron some of that out, or and hopefully, if someone's not going to sign it, then they're not going to sign it, and you either choose to marry that person without a prenup, or you don't marry them.
I thought a prenup was what I'm coming in with, you can't have that.
Well, that
But
too.
Whatever we make together, that's fine. But I don't want to bring all this into the marriage and you take part of that.
The terms of the prenup are whatever you want them to be.
Oh, okay.
So and typically I do see a lot of that. I see one spouse coming in with a significant accumulation of wealth,
And it could be a female.
Yeah, absolutely. And the other spouse coming in with, or I see people in their second or third marriages where they both have accumulated their own stuff and they maybe have adult children or their own children from separate relationships. And they want to say, I want my estate, if something happens to me, I want my things to go to my children because they were here first. And you're my new spouse.
Do you get into some estate planning also?
I will tell them to, no, I don't do the estate planning. I will tell them to go to an estate planning lawyer, to have them draw up documents or revise documents to be commensurate with the prenup.
Can you recommend somebody? Because a lot of people aren't going to have an estate planning attorney.
Yeah, I usually give them a couple of names, people that I trust. And
let's go to break. I've got so many questions here for you. First, give everybody your phone number and your website address.
The phone number is 561-544-6861, and the website is lewartlaw.com.
We're going to be right back with attorney Tina Lewert.
Lewert Law Offices is proud to be the family law expert on the Ask the Expert show. Attorney Tina Lewert is a board-certified specialist in marital and family law. Attorney Lewert is committed to obtaining the best resolution for your divorce or other family law case by consistently providing skilled representation, expert legal advice, and personal attention. Attorney Lewert has developed an excellent reputation for providing effective divorce and family law representation in Boca Raton and the surrounding communities. Lewert Law Offices offers legal advice and representation in a wide range of family law matters, including divorce, child custody, time sharing and visitation, child support, alimony, complex asset distribution, post-judgment modifications, and paternity actions. For expert representation in all aspects of divorce and family law, contact attorney Tina Lewert today at 561-544-6861 or visit www.lewartlaw.com.
Okay, we're back. This has got to be the fastest 30 minutes in radio. This is such an easy show. I think what makes it so easy is when I hear you explain something, you make it sound so easy.
Thank you.
And I think that's
try.
what's so great. If someone comes to you, they don't have to worry about you talking over their head. Because sometimes people don't want to look stupid and they don't ask a question that they have. But you just make just like so comfortable.
Thank you. Well, and I tell my clients too, and I always tell people they should when they're looking for an attorney, they should talk to a few different ones, and it's a fit. It's a personality
fit. There, aren't you?
And well, yeah, maybe, and a lot of them come back. Good. Absolutely, yeah, well, yeah, but it's got to be a good fit, and it's of course it's good to find a lawyer who's willing to not just tell you the law, but also be willing to educate. And because I tell my clients, I want to work with them. I want us to work together. So they're making decisions too. Like I might say, well, we might do this or do that because the law is, and I want them to understand why we're doing things in the case, why we're strategizing a certain way, why we might take certain actions and not other actions, or file this motion here or there or whatever. So I want them to understand why, so they're part of it too.
I want to ask you something because I've learned so much stuff already today. So I know a lot of wives or husbands don't really want to hurt the other one.
They don't.
You have to get tough, don't you? This is not the time to be the nice guy.
Depends on the divorce. I have some people that come to me that say, we're totally amicable. We're talking. We're very open about this. We're going to be friends after this is over. I just know it. And that actually happens. I have other people who hope for that and the opposite happens. And I have other people who right from the start say, we're already complete. This is going to be bad. He or she's going to lie. They're going to scheme and scam and try to, get over and win and all sorts of things like that. So it just depends on the relationship.
Leave things on the table when you have that mentality. Like I knew my mother said, I know your father's hiding stuff, but I'm going to let it go.
Sometimes.
And we found out later he was.
Yeah, sometimes. Well, and there's an element, when you're providing your financial disclosure, you're swearing to the accuracy and the completeness of the disclosure. So there are laws about that. Yeah, right. Okay. So when you're signing your financial affidavit, when you're signing your certificate that you're complying with some of the rules of disclosure, if there's something that you're hiding or concealing, there are actually remedies for that. If you find something later and you really don't know it until later, you find it out later after the fact, you can come back on a fraud.
Is there a
count.
time span?
If in family law, there's no limit on a fraudulent financial affidavit.
So if you found something 20 years later
that someone didn't disclose, you could come back. It's hard to prove. It's real hard to prove. But sometimes, for, like what you're saying, do you just let it go? For the sake of settlement, it depends. I like my clients to at least know everything they can know. And I can say, hey, maybe if we went to court, you could get this, or I could get this, or I can or can't get you. I like to tell them what we could do if they went after every dime possible. But sometimes you get to a point, and it's a business deal. It's a business decision, because you're going, wait a minute, how much am I going to spend on attorney's fees? I'm fighting over X, but attorney's fees are going to be X times 2. This is
right.
stupid. And you have to actually take the emotion out of it for a second and say, okay, I'm gonna cut a deal and cut my losses. And yeah, settlements are they involve compromise. So I will not suggest a compromise until I know my client at least is adequately advised of everything that exists. And if they say, you know what, okay, I know this exists, I know this, that, we can go this way, that, we can go to trial and spend, tens of thousands of dollars, but I'd rather settle, knowing what I know, I still want to settle for this, and this is fine with me. So that's, as long as everyone is informed, they can do that. But that's hard for a lot of people to do.
Yeah.
Some people cannot take the emotion out of it, and they just want to fight to fight.
But I've heard I don't know why it's more women than men, said, I should have gotten a better attorney, and I should have fought harder, because now I'm left with basically nothing. And I don't know why it's women that I hear that from. This is not a place that you want to scrimp on.
No, and it's scary, because you see people that, I get it. I get it. Litigation is expensive, and attorneys aren't cheap. And you can shop around and look around, and there's a going rate and there's a range, and sometimes you do get what you pay for, so you have to be careful. But if you find an ethical lawyer who knows what they're doing, it's something that it's good money spent, because if you're if you try to save and you're going to be missing something. And that's just what I see. It's just what I see after the fact.
I hope you don't mind when I say this, because if I was sitting listening to the show, first of all, I would enjoy this show, especially if I'm getting ready to go through a divorce, have a friend or something. And when you say that you're board certified, I don't want people to think that you're like $700 an hour.
No.
Because I'm not saying you're less expensive, but they should at least call you. Don't just, she's going to be way too expensive for me because she's board certified.
Yeah, and I'll tell you, the Florida bar actually does tell us that for board certified lawyers can charge more. You're actually allowed to. And like I said, you get what you pay for. So you're getting an expert in family law. But I know plenty of colleagues around town that are board certified. There actually happens to be a high concentration of board certified lawyers in the South Florida area. So I know a few that we're in the middle of the range. We're not unreasonable.
But I want to think that you're like at the very, very top.
No, not
me.
Because
you're board certified.
No.
And you've been doing this for how many years?
I'm in my 17th year. Is
Wow.
that right? Yeah, that.
You know
You're
what?
supposed to say that can't be.
I know you're too young for that.
Yeah. Anyway.
But I got to tell you that we always Google our people who are going to be part of our show. And you've been doing this for 17 years, and I don't know if there's something hidden in there or not. You don't have any negative on you. Nothing.
Well, that's good news.
Nothing.
Yeah.
I think listen, anybody's in business that long. They have this thing, it's called online people have been ripped off. I mean, Sears is on there, J.C. Penney's is on there.
Yeah.
You're in business for a long time. There's going to be, but you are so clean.
Yeah.
I thought that was so
Knock
cool.
on wood.
Yeah, knock
Thank
on
you.
wood. That's amazing, especially, that's why I wanted to bring up how long you've been in practice for. So let's give everybody your phone number again.
Sure. It's 561-544-6861, and the website's lewartlaw.com.
What if, now, South Florida it's called no fault.
Florida, yeah.
I
Florida's
kept
a
saying
no-fault
when
state.
it's not my fault. No, but it's no fault. So if you want a divorce, you're going to get a divorce.
If you want a divorce, you're going to get a divorce. The court is never going to ask you why, how, whose fault it was, what happened to break down the marriage, who wanted to work it out, who wanted to go to counseling, and who didn't. They're never going to ask anything like that. It's not relevant to the case. Also, what no fault means is that you don't have to prove grounds to get a divorce. You don't have to prove adultery or abuse or things like that.
Is that a state thing? It's statewide, it's not
correct.
like that in every state.
I don't know if there are still states that have fault divorce. There probably are a few, but I feel like it's got to be not too many. So in Florida, all you need to say is the marriage is irretrievably broken. That's a legal phrase, and it means that the marriage is over. There's nothing the court can do to put it back together, and they don't ask any reason beyond that.
And I want to tell, because we got a lot of these too, the grandparents, you're kind of out of luck on
that's
this
always
one.
the question.
Big question.
Grandparents'
Do grandparents
rights.
have rights? And we've done that enough on the show that they don't.
Yeah. The grandparents, there's no provision in the statutes for grandparent custody or grandparent visitation. So usually what I find is the grandparents are going to see the children when it's their respective son or daughter's
to 'em,
time.
even if you don't like them. Start now. So we've got about another minute or so. My favorite thing to ask you. No, because
Wait, I want to add to that though. Before I want to go backwards. So the grandparents though, but I find that the grandparents spending, your family's going to spend time when it's your time with the child.
Right.
It actually, I hear people tell me it leads to more quality time.
Really?
Because you only have half the time, or give or take, and
Right.
so it just more quality time there. You're making more use of the time that you have with the
but
kids.
they want the rights, and there just isn't any.
No.
So
Anyway.
I always ask you this because I think you give such a great answer. Why should I retain you as my attorney?
What was my answer last night?
It's always good.
Well,
this is a chance I give you to brag.
I
and you
know.
should.
Yeah, no, thank you. And I know what I'm doing. I'm an expert in the area. I care, and I care about my clients. I care. It's not lost on me. The importance isn't even a big enough word that all this stuff means to them. It's everything in their life when they're going through this. They're where they're going to live, how much money they're going to have to live on, their children, and those things are not lost on me as far as how it's everything to my clients, and so I take it immensely seriously, and I think
they
that
can feel your passion. Because that's really what it is. To stay in this, you've got to have a passion for it. So give everybody your phone number again.
Phone number is 561-544-6861, and the website is www.lewartlaw.com.
And if you've missed part of the show today, go back. You can watch it tonight. Just go to her website. You got a great website. Whoever did that did a wonderful job. And Tina will be back with us again next month, as always. Thanks for coming. Loving you coming. It's the easiest show to do. Hey, we're going to go to break right now. We come back. We've got our criminal lawyer, Tony Mosk, with us. We'll be right back.
Lewert Law Offices is proud to be the family law expert on the Ask the Experts show. Attorney Tina Lewert is a board-certified specialist in marital and family law. Attorney Lewert is committed to obtaining the best resolution for your divorce or other family law case by consistently providing skilled representation, expert legal advice, and personal attention. Attorney Lewert has developed an excellent reputation for providing effective divorce and family law representation in Boca Raton and the surrounding communities. Lewert Law Offices offers legal advice and representation in a wide range of family law matters, including divorce, child custody, time sharing and visitation, child support, alimony, complex asset distribution, post-judgment modifications, and paternity actions. For expert representation in all aspects of divorce and family law, contact Attorney Tina Lewert today at 561-544-6861 or visit www.lewartlaw.com. Tony Moss is a criminal defense attorney who has practiced in the South Florida area since 1988. The Tony Moss Firm, LLC, handles a wide variety of state and federal criminal matters, including financial fraud and white-collar crimes, violent felonies, drug crimes, firearms offenses, pre-arrest investigations, and criminal appeals. It's not your job or your loved one's job to deal with law enforcement in a criminal case. That job should be handled by an experienced, dedicated attorney whose practice focuses exclusively on criminal defense. You should not try to go it alone. If you or a loved one stands accused of any kind of criminal matter, Tony Moss is ready to put his 29 years of experience to work for you. Just call us at 877-547-9407 or visit our website at www.tonymosslaw.com. We have offices in Miami and Fort Lauderdale and are available to assist you throughout the state of Florida.
And we're back. Wow, today is Law Day. We just got finished with Tina Lord, who does family law. And today, man, I'm like kind of blown away by you. I mean, you do the big cases. You know, Richie, we're talking about DUI, but God, you do capital murder cases, and you do the big ones, bro.
I have quite a few of them. That's true.
Let me introduce you to our criminal attorney, Tony Moss. Your office is in Miami, but it doesn't matter, though, because you practice out of Broward and Palm Beach.
Right. I do have a branch office in Broward. It's appointment only, but it is available there for Broward and Palm Beach clientele. And I do travel to home or workplace if need be.
Well, you've got a great voice, but you still have to get up to the mic. You've got a wonderful voice.
Thank you.
So your practice is in Miami, out of Miami, but you also do Broward.
Correct.
What area of law in criminal law do you mostly concentrate on?
Well, most of my experience has been in serious felony cases. I've very seldom do DUIs.
Now, that's not just murder.
No,
what
just
else
murder.
Does that include?
That can include kidnappings, any kind of violent felonies, robberies. I've done in a number of drug cases over the years. In federal court, I've handled quite a number of fraud cases. Identity theft is like a growth industry down here in South Florida, so I've had a few of those cases over the years. And I also do appeal work, primarily in federal court. But I cover a pretty extensive range of felony offenses in both jurisdictions.
We talked about this last time. Tony, it seems like things are rough out there. I mean, you're hearing... And maybe it's because, from these refugees coming in, I know in some of these other cities and states, they really have trouble. So what if a refugee down here commits murder? Mm-hmm. Do you get those cases too?
Yes, I have in the past.
Okay, so you do cases that the court awards to you to handle?
Right.
Okay. Wow, I tell you what, that would be probably the luckiest day ever to get you as an attorney.
Thank you.
But then the state pays for that, or does federal? Who pays for it?
Well, in a state-appointed case, there's an agency in Tallahassee called the Justice Administrative Commission. They handle the purse strings for the criminal justice system throughout the state, and they also handle financing for civil cases like dependencies, in which children are abandoned or abused in their custody issues. And in the federal court system, the Criminal Justice Act is the vehicle by which we get paid.
I'm going to ask you a lot of questions I'm like in awe of you. I think I'm really impressed with you. And I want to, because I know there's so many things going on in the news. Let's start off with Arkansas.
Okay.
So you've got 8 people who are up for the death sentence.
They were.
And you've handled death cases before.
Yes, I have. Unfortunately, I've never had a client that's been sentenced to death.
Oh, you haven't? Okay. So
have
that's
not.
Kind of a compliment to you. But so what's going on in the courts now where they're they've been, I guess, on death row for a long time.
Well, in a nutshell, what's happening is there's a particular drug. I think it's I don't remember how to pronounce it.
No, I understand. Yes, and it's actually going to be, I guess, used at the end of this month or something.
Well, the supply that's currently available to the state of Arkansas has an expiration date at the end of the month, beyond which there could be additional legal challenges to its effectiveness. So the state of Arkansas wants to execute 8 people within something like an 11-day span before the drug runs out, because pretty much nationwide and worldwide, the suppliers of the drug do not want it used for executions.
That's right, I heard that.
So if the current supply does expire, then the likelihood that Arkansas will be able to replenish its supplies for future executions would be very remote.
So you've had clients who've gone to prison, but that doesn't make you a good or bad attorney. Some of them you've lessened how many years they have to go for. What is the mentality, and I'm going to kind of go to Hernandez now.
Okay.
What is the mentality of a person in prison for the rest of their life versus the one who's up for the death penalty. It could take 20 years or 25 years before anything happens.
That's true, which in many, in quite a few cases that are being litigated now, the
I mean, would they
turnover
rather
time.
get it over with, or do they want to try to live?
There
And is
have
that living?
Well, there are volunteers. There have been volunteers over the years. Gary Gilmore
remember
was
him in
one.
Utah.
Right. The first one after the Supreme Court renewed executions. He's the most prominent example, but there have been several others. But I think for the most part, the people who are on the row, they want to live.
Okay.
Because even if there's no chance of their ever getting out of prison, even if their sentences are commuted to life, but it's still life with no parole, at least that still provides them some measure of dignity. It certainly would give them the opportunity to have interaction with their families, if they still have families on the outside that they're in touch with that care for them. And just on a general basis, there's not the sense of fatalism that you would ordinarily expect. If anything, even if they're never released, even if they are returned to general population under a life sentence, at least the conditions are much more favorable
Gotcha.
than living in a 8x10 cell block 23 hours a day. Nobody can go through
So
that.
what happened to Hernandez? Because here's a guy who just won a double murder case.
Right.
He just won that, and his attorney is saying, I've seen some things in this first case that we might be able to get you a new trial. Why would someone want to kill themselves? Or do you think he did?
That is the $64,000 question. I know that one of his attorneys, Jose Baez, who we remember from the Casey Anthony trial,
Right.
is pressing the authorities in Massachusetts to do a fuller investigation because he believes that there may have been some foul play involved. I'm certainly not in a position to comment on whether that would be the case because I don't have all the facts.
Mine was more, the mentality of a prisoner.
Right. But I would think that if, in fact, it was a suicide, it may well have been an overwhelming sense of guilt that may not have been soothed by the fact that he was acquitted in his second trial. It may be, as a columnist for, I believe, New York Daily News for the Sports Illustrated said that he may have come to the realization that despite his acquittal on that case, he would never again have a chance to live the life that he had had before.
Maybe going through all that money, because he went through a lot of money.
That's true, which is going to be a problem for the families of the survivors in the civil cases. Those cases can still continue, even though his estate would now be substituted for him as the defendant. But as a practical matter, there may not be much in the way of assets left over to be divided because his legal bills, I'm sure, were massive.
Yes.
He hadn't been bringing in any income since 2014 when he was arrested. And I imagine there will also be certain assets, possibly an NFL pension if he qualified for it, that would be beyond the reach of creditors. So I would not want to be in the position of those civil attorneys right now. Let's put it that way.
I love we're sitting here with attorney Tony Moss, and I feel so comfortable with you. I mean, I would think if I was, God forbid, ever in that situation. Okay. He knows sports.
Okay.
So, a lot of these guys, and women too. I'm sure you've represented women also
I've had a handful over the years, yes.
with murder cases.
Got one right now in Miami, yes.
Okay. A lot of them do not have a father.
True.
So when you come in, I can see you kind of being a father figure to some of these people because it so much sounds like you do care.
I think that's one of the assets that I try to bring to the table. One of the things that we talked about last week about how my experience as a capital litigator can be an advantage in any other type of case. When you're putting together a mitigation case on behalf of a capital client, there's a certain level of empathy that has to be innate. It's not something that you can fake. It's not something that you can fabricate because the clients will see right through it. Their family members will see right through it. And they don't want to feel manipulated. They're already going through substantial trauma just from the nature of the situation. And the last thing that they want to do is entrust their lives and trust some of the most shameful secrets of their lives to somebody who they feel is just putting on a show
Right.
of being empathetic, of being understanding. So,
And you got to get them to really open up to you and be honest with you. I would think as
That's
an
correct.
attorney, this is not the time to lie.
no, it's not. It's not in a typical mitigation case, for example, and this is true in non-capital cases as well. Just say the skill set translates very easily, but typically, especially when there's been some history of trauma or abuse in the
In the
life,
family.
it takes numerous interviews
Oh,
with
yeah.
the client and with the significant people in his or her family in order to get to the bedrock truth of how the client ended up in the situation that
And
he or
you
she
got to
found
know the
himself.
truth. You of all
We
people
have to. That's
have to
our
know.
stock in trade. Because if we're going in front of a jury in a capital case or in front of the judge in a non-capital case, and we're trying to make the case to keep the punishment as minimal as possible under the circumstances, we have to be able to present the human side that a jury would never see. Because usually in the when the jury's deciding guilt or innocence, the background of the client is not going to be a concern. Their main interest is whether the state's evidence was sufficient to prove guilt. And if they have found that to be the case, then their job is done. It's up to the judge at that time to decide what sanction is appropriate. And in order to assist the judge in making that decision, we have to present the totality of the client's life as much as we can, the good and the bad, so that we can provide the context within which the decision can be made.
Do you prefer a jury trial or a judge, or does it depend on the case?
I have never done I've never done a non-jury trial. I always prefer
You prefer a jury?
prefer a
Okay.
jury trial.
Do you handle domestic violence cases?
Rarely.
Okay.
Rarely.
Why is that?
Well, for
Because you
one,
hear a lot about it.
well, for one thing, most of the domestic violence cases are handled in misdemeanor court.
Okay.
You know, and I do take misdemeanor cases, but just not as frequently. But the issue with domestic violence is your previous guest, Tina LeWert, was
Right.
describing. When you have the kind of dynamics that are involved when two people in an intimate relationship who have had a chance to see each other's scar tissue and too often know how to reopen those scars and bring out the worst impulses in each other. Those situations can be very intense, and that's where a sense of calmness as an attorney becomes essential. Because, for example, if I'm representing the male and he's been accused of committing battery against the spouse, there's going to be a level of denial that's involved because no man, for the most part, wants to admit or is willing to admit to being a wife beater
Yes.
or an abusive spouse. So there's going to be a level of protectiveness that I have to recognize, but I still have to somehow work my way through that in order to get to the bottom of what actually happened, whether there may have been some kind of provocation, maybe not enough to justify a verdict of not guilty, but at least to again contextualize the events so that if there is a guilty
I
verdict
want to
down
give
the road,
people, we're going to go
the
to
judge
break
can
in
make
just a
a
minute. I want to
decision.
give people kind of a picture when they come to you.
Okay.
Let's talk murder, okay? Let's talk I guess it'd be federal murder. Is there
Most-
both federal or state?
Mostly they're state
Okay,
charges.
so this is going to be in state court.
Okay.
How long is your first interview with them?
Depends on the discovery that I have available, who the person is, what information they may or may have about the facts of the case. There's no hard and fast rule on that.
Okay.
But usually, if my initial meeting with the client is going to be at least a couple of hours, even
Okay.
if it's nothing more than going over the arrest affidavit, discussing it as a preliminary matter, what the discovery process will be like, what experts may be involved in the case that I would be able to bring on board, and just giving.
Are you allowed to go to the jail anytime you want, or is there only certain times that are set up
Well,
while you're working on a case?
Well, generally you're not allowed in after say 10 o'clock.
Okay,
at night.
I could understand
But
that.
within say.
But if you have to come in every day, you can go in every day.
Not necessarily.
Okay.
Usually I don't have to do that, but again, that's a case by case determination.
Okay. See, I go to Calvary Chapel,
Okay.
and I'm a prayer counselor there.
Oh, are you?
And that means everybody comes up to me with their problems, things that are their kid did this, a lot of times it's their child did this, or my husband did this. And there's a lot of people who listen to this show.
Okay.
And you just never know who's out there. So I respect you so much. I'm kind of like interviewing in front of everybody because you never know who's listening. Because our Dallas show that we do every week, we actually had someone who the mother's son was at bank robbery.
Okay.
And she listened to this attorney we have on there, and he just does federal cases, no state at all, unless he has to. And she, just hear me, she said, I got to have this guy. And she called on the air, and she said, I want you to represent my son.
Now that would be the holy grail.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So it's like, I feel like, I'm interviewing you because you never know who's listening.
Yeah.
We're going to go to break. When we come back, we've got more with attorney Tony Moss. We'll be right back.
Tony Moss is a criminal defense attorney who has practiced in the South Florida area since 1988. The Tony Moss Firm, LLC, handles a wide variety of state and federal criminal matters, including financial fraud and white-collar crimes, violent felonies, drug crimes, firearms offenses, pre-arrest investigations, and criminal appeals. It's not your job or your loved one's job to deal with law enforcement in a criminal case. That job should be handled by an experienced, dedicated attorney whose practice focuses exclusively on criminal defense. You should not try to go it alone. If you or a loved one stands accused of any kind of criminal matter, Tony Moss is ready to put his 29 years of experience to work for you. Just call us at 877-547-9407 or visit our website at www.tonymosslaw.com. We have offices in Miami and Fort Lauderdale and are available to assist you throughout the state of Florida.
Hey, we're back. This show, I'm telling you, it's already going by so fast. Sometimes you never know what's going to happen to you or happen to a family member, and it's good to have a name that at least you've heard their voice and you've listened to them speak. So write this phone number down because you never know. Give them your phone number again, Tony.
Okay, my toll-free number is 877-547-9407, and I can also be reached at 786-219-5467.
So when somebody is interviewing an attorney, is there one lost record? Does that mean anything at all?
Not really, and I'll tell you why. Because every case is going to be different. I mean, the ground rules by which the trial will be held are consistent, but the factual patterns in each case, they vary from one extent to another. You're dealing with different prosecutors who have different strengths and weaknesses. There may be co-defendants in the same trial. That can also alter the dynamics. And most important, you're never going to get the same jury twice.
Right.
So no matter how closely you scrutinize the jury and vet them during the voir dire process, there are always going to be certain perceptions, prejudices that they bring to the table that we may never be able to unearth. So there's not the same level of consistency on that end as there is in terms of the actual ground rules. So
that's a great answer because there was an attorney that was supposed to be one of the top attorneys in Dallas, and he lost the case. Mm-hmm. But he really didn't lose the case because they said anyone else that had been represented by another attorney would have got life in prison. This guy got 15 years. So he lost, but he didn't lose.
Well, that brings back a case that we had discussed briefly when I was here last month. It was a guy who had been charged with first-degree murder. even though he was nowhere near the scene of the shooting, but because of his participation in the underlying drug deal, he would have been looking at the same potential life sentence as the other two guys who were present. In that case, we were able to get a plea of 15 years in prison, which in his case, and from where I sat, that was a major win.
Yes.
The guy was in his 40s, so he'll be about maybe 56 or 57 when his time is done. He was a Jamaican national, so he's going to be sent back, once his prison time is done. But he'll be a free man. And had he not followed my advice, had he insisted on going to trial, there's a very strong likelihood that he would have died in prison. But now, that is not going to happen for him. That was a major win in my book, even though it was still a guilty plea.
What do you do when you have a client that doesn't want to take your advice? Let's just say they want to get up on the witness stand, and you're advising them not to.
Well,
Can you step away, or you just have to go with what they want to do, even knowing it's wrong?
Well, if the client is asking me to do something unethical, then I would step away.
Okay.
No question about it. If he just makes a decision that I think is tactically bad for him, but he has the right to make that decision, then I go along with it.
Okay.
So
even knowing it's could possibly hurt him.
Because there are three ultimate rights or three ultimate decisions that are always with the client. One is whether to plead guilty or not guilty. One is whether to demand a jury trial or waive it. And the third, to get to your point, is whether or not to testify in his own behalf. Those are fundamental rights. As to how I would present the case, what witnesses I may call, or what strategies I may employ, ultimately that's my call. But if the client insists against my advice on taking the stand and testifying, then I have to go along with that.
Gotcha.
But I can shape the examination in such a way as to hopefully minimize any damage that I may see coming. And I would certainly prepare him in advance as to what to expect when the prosecutor gets to cross-examine.
If the police come to your house to arrest you,
Okay.
do they have to read your Miranda rights?
Not at the time.
Some people don't know that, do they?
No, and the reason why there's a couple of reasons. One, because the arresting officer generally is not the person who's going to be doing the questioning.
Okay.
That's going to be left to the detectives. Because the only time Miranda is required is if the person is in custody. Basically, they're not free to leave, even if they're not formally arrested. And second, if the cops intend to question them about the crime. It's not a Miranda violation to ask background information like your age, date of birth, whether you're, how far you went in school, that kind of thing. But the other fact is that an arresting officer is not going to read the client rights right away, because en route to the station where the detectives hope to do an interview, the client's going to have time to think about the rights that he's just been read, and he may decide to invoke them.
Okay.
He may decide that he does not want to speak, that he wants to have a lawyer present. Detectives, as a practical matter, they don't want that.
Yeah, I'm sure.
They will wait until the last possible minute, once they've decided that they do want to question the client. And then they'll read the rights, they'll just satisfy themselves that the client understands them, and then they want to go right into the questioning if at all possible. So the final question they will ask is, knowing these rights as I've explained them to you, are you now willing to talk to me without an attorney present? They do not want the client to have enough time to think and decide maybe I should answer no.
So there's so many things somebody can be arrested for. What information do you not give them when you're arrested that you want to keep completely quiet? I mean, do you just give up your name?
If you're the arrestee?
If you're the arrestee.
You can provide your name. Again, that's non-Miranda violation. And you can provide my name and tell them that you don't want to talk until until he or she has had a chance to contact me.
So they shouldn't say anything else?
Nothing else.
Okay.
Nothing else. Now, there is every rule has an exception.
Right.
There is one case that I'm handling right now where it might have been a good idea for a client of mine to have spoken to the cops. Maybe. He was arrested for an armed carjacking and swears that he was in school. He was in night school at the time of the incident. The only reason that it may have been advisable for him to speak at that point is if he had given that account to the police, and he invoked his right to remain silent, but if he had given that account, presumably it would have appeared in the arrest form, the initial narrative of the case, and that would have put an attorney on notice that there may have been a video camera at the school for which a preservation order needed to be, or preservation letter needed to be issued so that the footage could be preserved, showing that he was on the campus at the time of the incident. Those tapes only run for about 30 days, right? So by the time I was appointed to the case, which was about 2 months afterward, the tape had already been erased. But as a general rule, save your story for your first meeting with the attorney, and then let us take it from there.
Because you never know.
You never know.
Listen, we've been sitting here for, gosh, it seems like last 10 minutes, 30 minutes goes by really fast. We have attorney Tony Moss with us. He's a criminal attorney. He definitely knows what he's doing. We're going to let's give everybody your phone number and your website address.
Sure. Again, the number is 786-219-5467. Toll free, it's 877-547-9407. And the website is www.tonymousslaw.com.
Tony, I love having you on. In fact, we're going to bring you on our Miami show
Looking forward
next
to
month.
it.
Thank you so much. And we'll be back again next week with more Ask the Experts. Everybody have a good evening.
Thanks for tuning in today to the Ask the Experts show. Tune in while some of the top local experts in their field from Broward and Palm Beach counties educate you in the areas of law, health, financial, and home improvement. You can also call our offices at 888-574-6999 to become an expert on our show. The opinions expressed on the preceding sponsored program were strictly those of its hosts, guests, and callers, and not necessarily those of this station, its staff, management, or sponsors.